Hey, how's it going everybody? It's Tanner here, and welcome to a new Ninjago video here on the channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the character of Jay and whether or not he can still be considered to be funny in the modern day. Do I think that Jay is still funny? Let's go ahead and talk about that. Before we begin though, just for a couple of quick disclaimers, again, this is all just based on my own opinions, so don't get too mad at me, and comedy is subjective. Not everything is going to be funny to the same people. Something that you might find funny might not be funny to your neighbor or your friend. Obviously, everybody has their own type of humor, and everyone has a humor that they don't like. My personal least favorite type of humor is bathroom humor. Can't stand it. I think it's the lowest common denominator when it comes to humor. I find it to be lazy and disgusting. Fortunately, Jay doesn't really fall into that category for me. That category in Ninjago is kind of reserved for Dareth, and that's part of the reason why I don't really care for Dareth's character. But in terms of Jay, yeah, he's not like that. I find his comedy to be somewhat enjoyable, but we're going to be going through that in a minute here. But in terms of the community, I've seen arguments from both sides. Some people find Jay funny, while some people find him to be insufferable and annoying, or at least they might have found him funny at one point in time, but nowadays he's not that funny. I'm going to be giving my own opinion on whether or not I think that Jay is still funny to this day, and we're going to be going through some different incarnations of Jay to kind of answer that. In a way, we're going to be discussing whether or not Jay was ever funny. So I have it split up into a couple of different categories here, because of course I've noticed that a couple of the characteristics involving Jay's comedy have kind of changed over the years, but in terms of our first incarnation, we're going to be taking a look at Jay's character from the pilots all the way to season 6. I think that's a good place to start. So in terms of this timeline, Jay's character was very consistent. He was funny, yet serious and outgoing. He knew when to appropriately tell a joke and when to hide it away in favor of a more serious approach to things. He basically knew when the ninja needed to be serious and when things could be a little bit lighthearted. Of course, Jay was kind of known for his freakouts or some of his over-dramatic scenes. Some of my favorites include when the ninja first encountered the Great Devourer. Jay absolutely loses his mind, and it's quite funny to watch. A lot of that does come from Jay, again, being a little bit over dramatic, but also in terms of other characteristics involving Jay's personality, like I said, his humor is pretty much spot on. He does wisecrack a lot. He's kind of like the Spider-Man, Peter Parker type character, where yes, he can fight, but he can also wisecrack at the same time. A lot of the ninja have various catchphrases now, and Jay was the first, I guess, initiator of that. A lot of the catchphrases that the ninja used during these first couple of seasons sound very similar to things that Jay himself would invent, so I feel like Jay's character was very consistent. He was very funny because he wasn't immature about it. He was funny, but he was clever, and I think that's the best type of humor, when you can be clever but also be funny at the same time. I find Jay's character from the pilots to season 6 to be very consistent. That's what I consider to be the first incarnation of Jay's humor, if you will. The second is season 7 all on its own. In Hands of Time, I noticed that Jay was a little bit strange. This might have to do with a couple of variables that we'll get into later, but in terms of Jay's humor, it didn't really seem as on point as it was during this first incarnation that I just discussed. Something seemed off. It almost seemed like Jay was trying too hard to be funny, or maybe the writing was trying to push his humor a little too far. I mean, Jay from Hands of Time is still very much outgoing, like I said. I don't know, just something seems off about Jay in season 7. Can't really put my finger on it. Maybe, again, it kind of goes back to Jay's writing, trying a little too hard to make him funny, and also trying to give him a place in season 7. Season 7 isn't really Jay-focused, and other seasons did a good job at, balancing him with other characters, in my opinion. Hands of Time really didn't do that for Jay, so I'm giving season 7 Jay his own category here. In terms of seasons 8 through 10 Jay, basically the Oni trilogy Jay, I actually didn't think that this version of Jay was too bad. It kind of brought Jay back to the original level of comedy that he was kind of, used to spitting out during the first couple of seasons, and it felt like he was right back at home. He still freaked out on occasion, but his freakouts in seasons 8 through 10 were done a little differently, which I find to be really entertaining. My personal favorite freakout moment of Jay's actually comes from season 9, when the ninja have been lost in the first realm. Jay kind of loses his mind entirely, and he kind of develops this mellow type of personality, and he creates a video game console out of wood, decides that the ninja's fates are basically already wrapped up, and decides that there's nothing else to do but just have fun. And I really like that version of Jay. Again, his comedy was very similar to what we saw Jay doing during the first couple of seasons, and it was kind of done in a little bit of a different way. Like I said, he still freaked out, but the freakouts weren't as, I guess, over dramatic, if you will, as the first couple of freakouts were. Now, jumping from season 11 onwards here, Jay is now in a very weird spot, and I'm sure you guys can probably tell how I feel about season 11 Jay, season 11 onward Jay rather. He's just kind of all over the place. He doesn't really seem as mature as past seasons. The humor is very one note and generic, and it's not really specific to Jay. At this point in time, all of the ninja had pretty much had their share of comedy spotlight. Like I said, some of the ninjas started to obtain some catchphrases, and they kind of acted very similar to Jay in terms of their comedy. A lot of the ninja tried to basically sound like Jay, and I'm not sure if that was intentional by the writers or not, but season 11 Jay isn't really distinguishable from the other ninja. The same type of humor coming from Jay is the same type of humor that comes from Cole, or Kai, for example, even Zane to an extent. The ninjas' humor all seems relatively the same, and it doesn't really seem like each character is individual in terms of their wisecracking one-liners, if you will. They all seem very similar. Now that we've kind of ventured through the various incarnations of Jay, what is the explanation for this? Why did I decide to separate this up here? I believe it honestly comes down to the writing. You might notice that throughout a couple of the seasons, not all the seasons, but for the majority of them that I had lumped together, they basically share a consistent writer. Again, not all of the seasons that I've lumped together kind of follow this trope, so keep that in mind, but a lot of them do, and I feel like it's just because the writers of the show, there are multiple writers for Ninjago, mind you, a lot of them really don't know how to keep Jay consistent in between seasons. One writer will write something for Jay in terms of comedy, and then the next writer will kind of throw that type of comedy out in favor of a different one, and as such, Jay's comedy kind of goes all over the place. We've had a consistent writer from season 11 onwards here, so I feel like Jay's humor as of now in the modern day, that's what we're going to be seeing for the character for at least the next couple of seasons. We've already seen it for a good handful of the show, and we're very much used to it right now. But honestly, I don't really think it's all that great. Like I said during the season 11 section for Jay, I feel like his humor is very not individual to himself, if that makes sense. He shares the same type of humor with the other ninja, and it almost seems like the entirety of the show is focused on one type of humor, instead of making the comedy feel a little bit more characteristic, if you will, throughout the different characters. It feels like everybody's a Jay now. Everybody's wisecracking, everyone's comedic, everybody's the comic relief. Doesn't really seem like Jay has an individual spotlight anymore. And I honestly feel like Jay was funny at one point in time. He wasn't as funny as he could have been, but he also wasn't as serious as he should have been either. Jay was Jay. He had a very distinct personality in the earlier seasons, but compared to the modern day Ninjago version of Jay, I don't think the modern version even compares at all in terms of the comedy to the original Jay. Rewatching older Ninjago is a treat for me because Jay used to be my favorite ninja. I thought that he was the funniest one on the team, and I really related to him in that way, and of course blue was my favorite color, so that really didn't hurt either. But yeah, Jay was at first my favorite ninja on the team, and that had to do with his writing, especially during the pilots in seasons 1 and 2. Definitely enjoyed Jay during those couple of seasons, but in terms of modern day Jay, I can't really see my younger self latching onto this version of Jay all that much. He kind of seems bland or average. I'm not sure what the right word to use there is, but the old Jay was so full of inspiration and wisecracking jokes, and he was funny, but nowadays it kind of seems like Jay has kind of lost his thunder, if you will, and that's not a diss on the character or the writers, mind you. It's just something that I wanted to point out. In terms of whether or not I think Jay is still funny, I'm gonna have to say no. He has some funny moments for sure, but it's not as unique to the character as it once was. I feel like the older version of Jay is definitely a lot better in that regard, and obviously I don't hate modern Ninjago, don't twist my words there. All I'm saying is that the modern day Jay doesn't really have the same level of individual comedy as the original version of Jay did. That's honestly my own opinion on that. You don't have to agree, you don't have to disagree. I'm just saying that these are my own thoughts on the modern day version of Jay. Jay was funny at one point in time, but nowadays he's not as individual in his comedy, and as such, to me, he doesn't really come off as all that funny anymore. Jay was originally the comic relief, and now he just seems like, part of the comic relief crew, if you will. Everybody's the comic relief nowadays for Ninjago, and Jay isn't really all that special anymore. So those are pretty much my thoughts on this subject. Do I think Jay is still funny? Well, not so much these days, but I want to turn it over to you guys to leave your thoughts down below as well. What do you think about the modern version of Jay, and do you think he's still funny to an extent? Leave all your thoughts down below in the comments, and also feel free to list off your favorite jokes that Jay has actually made throughout the series. Again, my favorite jokes have to do with Jay's freakouts, especially during seasons 8, 9, and 10. Absolutely love Hunted Jay. I think that's one of my favorite incarnations of Jay. But leave all your thoughts down below, guys. What do you think is Jay's best moment in terms of comedy, and what do you think about the comedic value of the modern day interpretations of Jay? Leave all your thoughts down below in the comments, and hopefully you enjoyed the video here today. With all that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. That's going to pretty much wrap it up for my thoughts here. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and check out the links down below in the description for other forms of social media. As always, big shout out goes out to my Patreon supporters, including once again the marvelous Jan. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Once again, my name is TannerFishies, and with that I bid you farewell.